Hey, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co.
And I am Ricky. Today we are doing Quests for the Moonstones by Kids Chronicles.
Well, technically, Quest of the Moonstone is by Lucky Duck Games, but it's part of the Kids Chronicles, which I imagine is a series that we will see more of. This is going to be a kids' version of Chronicles of Crime from Lucky Duck Games. In case you've ever played Chronicles of Crime, you have not. I've played Chronicles of Crime. This is the kids' version. Basically, that means it's a bit of a kind of an adventure game, a mystery as you try to figure out what happened in the game. Now, this diverts a bit from Chronicles of Crime, in case you know about that, from being less of a detective and more of a general mystery sense of trying to figure out how the adventure plays out, doing what you need to do, wandering around the board. This is heavily going to rely on an app integration and QR codes on the locations, people, and items that you'll acquire. You want to talk about some of the things you'll be doing in your adventures?
Yeah, you will start in a certain place, and basically once you're there, the app will give you a countdown, and then you'll be zoomed into that place, and you can look around. You turn or swipe the screen to look, and you just, there's two decks, item deck and people deck, and you take out what you find, and then in the first adventure, you get a little helper, and they'll tell you what they saw, and you can look again if you didn't see what they saw.
Are you referring to Nills?
Yes.
Yeah, so you're going to be able to look around, like you said. Nills will say things at the end like, oh, I spotted a person and two objects. Did you as well? Which gives you an opportunity to realize if you missed something in that zoom. And you can basically, you're using a phone and moving around, or you can swipe on it to see things. But there you'll be putting items and people down. The items will go into your bag, this little row down here. People will go into specific locations. And then you'll travel around the board interacting with those people to try to figure out the story. The base game, the starting off, comes with, I believe, 6 quests, a tutorial, 4 other missions, and then like a final showdown. The 4 intermediate missions can be done in any order, then a final showdown as you go through the culmination of everything, and each one presents a little miniature story or a sequence of events that's happening as you try to figure things out, as you try to move around, like, oh no, something is happening, let's go over here to this location and talk to that person. That person will then reveal some piece of information or clue, which will be relevant as you go to another location. So you start, basically every mission has a bit of going to all 6 locations on the board, and there's 2 sides, there's a winter board on the other side of this board, and then each time you go to a location, you often have to go back to other locations with the knowledge and or items you have gained. So suddenly you find a ladder that will be relevant when you go back to a different location and want to use that ladder now that you have it. So it has that sequence of back and forth of finding information yourself, of talking to characters to gather information, and utilizing all those to accomplish what you need to accomplish, and then ultimately go through the final steps of each scenario where you kind of have what you have. It's like a little hard to talk about this without spoilers, where you have the things you need, or you know the information you need, and you answer the questions if there are any, and you basically go through all that until you accomplish the scenario, rinse and repeat 6 times, and that's basically Kids Chronicles Quest for the Moonstones. Anything I missed?
I don't really think so, but you were talking about recovering everything, you're very used to this, so I didn't really catch everything.
Gotcha. Cool. So, that is basically Kids Chronicles, which brings us to the review part of things, what we like, didn't like, can see others not liking, all of that. First of all, off the bat, just in terms of ease of play, starting off with 2 things I usually cover. Ease of play, this game is very easy to dive into. You literally just need the app, you don't need anything else. You grab the app, you start off the game, you're good to go. There's no rulebook to read, there's nothing like that. The app will guide you through the experience, so it's a very easy game to jump into. Table space is great. Playtime usually runs you 30 to 60 minutes per scenario, depending on how fast you're going with your kids or your family or whoever's playing the game, somewhere in that range, but overall, fairly accessible game. As far as player count, I actually don't know if there's a fixed player count on this. I've just been playing this with you guys. Is there a player count on this box? I don't even know this one. Because, strictly speaking, I'm not seeing a player count listed, and I think that makes... Oh, there we go. It says 1 to 4 players. Now, the reason I paused there is because, thematically speaking, I don't see not thematically, mechanically speaking, I don't see a reason why you can't play this with any number of players. Obviously, the more players you have, the more cluttered the general system will be, because you might have too many players to see things or to have ideas or whatnot. But strictly speaking, there's no player count in a typical sense. You're not playing as pawns moving around the board. You don't have specific items that you're managing. You're just working together to solve the mystery. For myself, I would say this probably does get more cluttered the more players you have. I've been playing it with 4 for all of our plays. We've played the whole thing through at 4 players, and 4 was not too much. But I can see the more you add, just getting a little bit more convoluted, because players will have less to add just inherently. You'll have, as it is, we already have, like, the 3 of you shouting, like, oh no, go here, talk about this, ask them that, ask the elf about the ladder, maybe he'll tell us how to use it or where to go. And so you already have a little of that. Again, works fine at 4. I imagine it plays well at 1, 2, and 3 as well. Playing it solo would have a little bit less fun, because you lose that you're like, nope, I don't want to play solo. Playing it solo would lose that players at the table aspect, but past that, it's really the core mechanics of the game don't change regardless of the number of players playing the game. Which brings us to what we liked, didn't like, and can see others not liking. Starting with you. What do you like about the game?
I like how the art's really pretty. There's 2 separate sides of the board for different scenarios instead of having to cram everything into one board and making it really confusing.
Yep.
I like how there's multiple characters. I like how they give you a tutorial and they don't even give a single one where it's too hard for you, because the tutorial gives you a guide. And I also enjoy how there's so many different objects and people, and you have no clue what's gonna happen, what's gonna come in handy unless you do certain things, and you have no clue what you're gonna use and not use based on where you go. Like, let's say you might have gotten something if you went to the lake, but you didn't go to the lake. That wasn't 100% necessary for the adventure, but what would help you, and you didn't go to the lake.
Yeah.
You're gonna miss out on some stuff, and it's so exciting to see how the adventure turns. I wish that there were a little more question mark spaces for the people, because on the board there is 2 spots for people that you don't know where they are, and 4 spots for items that you don't know where they are.
Now, for context, that means that sometimes you have people at locations on the board, and other times, and then items in your backpack. Other times you have items or people that go off to the side that they're not present, but you might be asking questions about them. Like, oh, let me ask the wizard about that other character, even though they're not actually on a spot at the moment. But yeah, I agree with you on some of those things. I like the art is fantastic across the board. The variety of stuff is great. I like the interactions and the sense of story you have as you go through things. That it's not purely you go to each location, but rather there is a sense of asking each character about different things, of asking them about other characters, of asking them about items, some of which will be intuitive as well. So you have these moments of you're like, oh wait, no, we need to ask her about the coin because something else that happened earlier implied that would be relevant, and so you have that sense of accomplishment as you go through this. I like very much how they have Nills, basically Nills the cat over there, telling you as you look through things what you may have missed, meaning you don't get bogged down by the fact that, because it's very easy to look through the app and scroll through things and then miss one thing, and that could in theory clog up your entire adventure, and Nills prevents that happening. So as a family, the kids get the experience of looking through the app, of finding oh no, look, I found a thing on a tree over there, but they don't do so at the cost of a negative experience if they didn't find something. So they have that sense of exploration, but it's very family friendly in the sense that there's a sense of forgiveness as to the story. And that sense of forgiveness permeates the game in general. The idea that there are often multiple pathways to get towards the information you need. You do have to ask enough questions, you do have to go through a sense of exploration and story, but it's not like a single thing that you miss will hurt you. Very often you can get to the right conclusion, and then you go through a bit of a question scene of like, oh no, what about this, or what about that? There are degrees of how right or how much knowledge you can have when you accomplish the adventure. Anything else before we move to what we didn't like?
Nothing. Not really anything else that I especially like.
Okay. So, moving to what we didn't like. I'll start off, and if you have anything, let me know. The one thing I don't like about this game in general is the fact, and this is a problem I have with Chronicles of Crime as well, is the idea that sometimes the things you should be asking characters about are not intuitive, nor should you have any reason to suspect. Sometimes you're like, oh yeah, we'll obviously ask the bard about the loot. That's fine. We'll ask the wizard about the magic wand. Or because of a prior interaction you'll have, you know to ask the wizard about the coin. So as long as you have those pieces of information. But other times, what you have to ask about can come across as completely random. The idea that sometimes it can just come down to scanning enough things, and you have a choice in the game. You can just scan everything, which takes a little of the fun away from it, because at that point you're not making decisions. You're just like, well, I'll scan this character about everything, and I'll scan that character about everything. And so sometimes you just get lucky, and you're like, oh, apparently we should have asked the bard about the fish. Who would have thunk to do that? And so I don't love that as a mechanic where you kind of can just get lucky. I like that the game builds forgiveness around those interactions, but it still feels like sometimes what you ask or how things go aren't like things you discovered or figured out. They're just luck of the draw, so to speak. Anything you don't like?
It's really annoying that they don't that when you use an item, they don't tell you to take it out of your treasure bag, because then you don't know if you have it or not. At the end of the game, it said, And at the end of the game, it said, these items stay in your treasure bag. These items stay in your treasure bag as you use them, unlike other things. But it never tells you if you get rid of it or not.
Yeah, the whole game, when we used something, we kept it because we weren't sure. Not that we need to scan them again, but just in case. And then in the end game, we're like, oh, apparently we should have gotten rid of them. So, what can you see others not liking about the game?
I think it might annoy them to have to flip back and forth between boards.
Because
certain adventures, you need both sides.
Yeah, and to be clear, that's less frequent. Most adventures are one or the other, but there was one adventure where you encounter both and you have to like drag all the items off and flip the board and move it back. So yeah, I can see that. For myself, my biggest warning about this will be, first of all, if you don't like app games, I don't know if this is going to change your mind. If you don't like having an app, I mean, you're doing a lot of scanning and scanning and scanning, you might not love that. And so that's the first warning I'd give. The second is this is very much a lighter experience. This is a game which is not necessarily a bad thing, just understand what you're getting yourself into. This is a family-focused game. If you're not doing this for the sense of journey and exploration you can have with your kids or your kids by themselves, then I wouldn't recommend it. It's a game that's basically, you know, scan this, go through story, figure out what's going on, a little bit of humor built into the stories and all that. I like it. It's solid. At the same time, just understand very much what this game is and who its target audience is for. Which brings us to the review. The school rating and what rating and all that. Rating, final thoughts?
I would probably do a 4 because it's a really good game, but it's kind of annoying how it just directs you on how to play the adventure and doesn't really tell you any rules, like you cannot do this, you cannot do that, you get rid of things in your treasure bag, you can only have this amount, they can only have X amount in your treasure bag if you run out of room. It doesn't really give enough, it just gives you guidance on how to play, like you scan this, you ask, and other stuff. It doesn't really give you guidance on what you do after those things, or what you can and can't do.
Gotcha. Yeah, for me, this one is, and rating family or kids games is always trickier because, like, do I rate it as a kids game? Do I rate it for myself? Generally, I rate it based on my level of interest in playing it, factoring in that I'm playing with my kids. For me, Kids Chronicles Quest of the Moonstones is a 3 out of 5. I enjoy the experience. I'm happy to go through with my kids. We finished the entire thing, and whatever else comes out in the Kids Chronicles lines, I'll likely dive into because it is a fun, enjoyable experience to play with my children. At the same time, from that more adult perspective, where I play a lot of strategy games, it's a very light game. So it's not going to get a higher rating. It is great for what it is. I think it does a solid job. But that's basically Kids Chronicles Quest for the Moonstones. A solid iteration upon the Chronicles of Crime system from Lucky Duck, but with a more family-focused focus. Until next time, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co.
And I'm Becky.
And have a good one.